Alcoholic Ricky B. Hey everybody. Good to be here. Good to be here sober. It's been a couple years since I spoke here. I remember it well. The last time I spoke here, I brought my son with me, and he had just come out of a treatment center after me putting him in jail for stealing from me, from the business. And I'm glad to say he just celebrated 2 years of sobriety. So this program works. He had many addictions too, other than just alcohol. My sobriety date is November the 20th, 2009. I'd like to tell you that was my first time in the program, but it's not. I see a lot of young faces in these rooms, and I was 28 years old when I first come into this program. I stayed around for several years and stayed sober for several years. But the daily reprieve that we have in this program, based on our spiritual condition, I quit working on those. Stayed away from you people long enough, and I went back to drinking. And that happened to me several times during my life. God, my higher power, has took the obsession away several times in my lifetime. It was Ricky B that chose to pick that drink up again. I was born in Thomasville. My home group's in Denton, North Carolina, about 20 miles away. I have a sponsor, Dennis Moore. He has a sponsor, and he has a sponsor. We have a close-knit group in Denton. There's around 22 home group members. Denton is very, very small. There's only maybe one or two people in the whole group that are from Denton. Everybody else is from around surrounding areas. I had a loving mother and father as I was growing up. Nothing happened in my childhood that got me to this program. Even though my daddy was an alcoholic, I moved away from home at an early age, and his real heavy drinking started after I left home, so I didn't get to see a whole lot of it, but he died with 13 years of sobriety in this program. So the family genes just carried over from my father to me to my son. Growing up, when I was born, I weighed 4 pounds. And in 1954, you weighed 4 pounds, you just didn't have much chance to live back then. They called the preacher in and told Mom and Dad, says there's really nothing we can do, but here I am. I showed them. And I was in the hospital for a pretty lengthy time. But through my early childhood, I was small, real small for my age in school, and everybody picked on Rick. I was telling somebody the other day, when I was 4 or 5, I should have known I was going to have trouble because I peed in my pants every day and I couldn't talk plain. And that's the truth. I had to go to speech therapy day after day after day for a long time. I couldn't pronounce the words correctly in school. People picked on you. I didn't like school. Back when I was in elementary school, they could hold you back, could have a meeting with your mother and father, and whether you was passing or not, if they thought you could do better, they'd hold you back, and that's what my mom and dad did to me. That was my first resentment towards my mother and father. I went on through school, and I think at the age of 13 or 14 years old when I had my first drink, I can remember exactly what it was. It was a bottle of Valley High wine. I just can't remember who I was with and who all was at the party. But we camped out back in those days, and we were having a party at my house. And I have no idea who I was with. My dad drank Miller Ponies, and Old Crow liquor. So undoubtedly I got into his stash several times growing up. I really don't remember too much about it, but I have friends that grew up with me, and they've mentioned it several times. At 16 years old, I can remember being at the beach, drinking a pint of Southern Comfort, and a girl found me passed out on the bed, and I was laying on my back, and I was regurgitating, and if she hadn't found me and pulled me off the bed, I would have died of the young age of 16 years old, and it would have been because of alcohol. And I hadn't even started drinking real good then. My drinking really started at the age of 18. That was drinking age in our town at 18. I could buy beer. And city over, they had a place called Lum's, which you could eat, and had these big old frosted mugs about that tall, and you could go in there and drink. And thousands of times I drove home drunk. Back in the 70s, you just didn't think nothing about driving drunk. I even got stopped a time or two and let go. I was sober enough to stand up, but I was still drunk, but they'd let you go back then. I worked for my father. At that time, he had a building supply business in Thomasville, and I went to work for him when I was like 17 years old. And I'd worked there several years, and we were partying on weekends, and the longer it went on, it would go on from Thursday to Saturday, and then it'd back up to Wednesday, and years later it became an everyday thing of going somewhere and partying. I had worked my way up into the company at the lumber plant. Now this was a lumber yard and a little bitty small hardware store, and all you could see is lumber stacked out in the yards. And when I say I'd worked my way up, I had worked my way up to getting a business card with my name and vice president on it. But you'd still find me out there in the lumber yard stacking lumber. But when I was out to them clubs bragging to those women, I didn't tell them that part. I just showed them that card. And that worked a lot of times. But drinking and partying was, other than working, drinking and partying was my life. I went to work every day. I was a hard worker. Started hanging around with, some of you may know Dennis, he don't mind me breaking his name, Dennis Moore, and some of them, they started peddling furniture. And we'd go out partying with them. They were out there peddling furniture. They was making thousands of dollars a week. And we'd go out partying, they'd pull out a roll of $100 bills, and old Ricky B here'd pull out a roll of $1 and $5 bills. And I said, man, something ain't right. I'm vice president, and they're just old truck driver. I said, something ain't right about this. So I went back and told my dad. I said, Dad, I believe I'll go start peddling furniture. And he said, all right. So my dad supported me in whatever I wanted to do, because he knew if I failed, he was going to let me fail, and I'd get a lesson from it. Well, I did. I went out and tried to peddle furniture on my own. First year I was in business, I had 2 loads of furniture stolen from me, and the insurance wouldn't pay it. Back then it was like $5,000 a whack for a truckload of furniture. And found out who stole one of my loads of furniture. And I was still drinking pretty bad, and come home and loaded up the shotgun and the rifle, and here I went out looking for that guy. Drunk as a skunk, didn't even hardly walk, and got to his apartment. He had 4 steps going up on the back stoop. And I got up on that stoop with them 2 guns in my arms like this and fell right backwards off the porch. And thank God I didn't wake him up, because he'd have probably come out there and killed me. But I got back home with that, and it wasn't long after that that I got stopped twice in one night. First cop stopped me, and I pulled my wallet out and had my niece's baby picture in my wallet. And first cop said, well, Mr. Batten, I see you're a family man. I believe I'll just let you go and let you have one more chance. I was leaning up against the car and couldn't even stand up. And I got back in the car, and I made it down the street about 400 yards. And I was all the way on the wrong side of the street. Now, this was a 5-lane road. I was all the way on the wrong side of the street again, and here come another car. And I seen him turn around, and the blue light turned on. So I was going to pull in the side street to wait on him, and I backed into a telephone pole. Well, he wasn't as nice. He didn't think the pictures. He didn't care much about the baby pictures. He took me in, and that was the beginning of my first sobriety in this program. And I went back and thanked that policeman for taking me to jail that night, because I was a good 25 minutes from home. I would have killed myself or somebody else going home that night. There's no doubt about it. But the lawyer that I had was real good friends of mine. And my dad had already got into the program at that time. And he said, Rick, said, if you'll go to AA, when we get up in front of that judge, he'll probably give you driving privilege. It'll be a whole lot easier on you. I said, okay, I'll go to AA. Well, first, I went to ARCA, which is still there. It's a whole lot different back in the 70s. Ted Smith and Tom Amos was there. I know maybe a couple of you know him in this room, but they were good people. And I had a lot of fun there. I went for fun and made belts and all kinds of things, you know. But I'm sure I did learn a lot about the program. There was this pretty little nurse that worked there, and I was probably more interested in her than I was anything else because I got sick a lot, especially after she started paying attention to me. But I come out of ARCA and got into the program and asked Roy H. to be my sponsor. Must not have been a very good sponsee because he don't even remember. But Roy was my dad's sponsor. And I was sober about 11 months. I went to a lot of meetings the first 11 months I was sober. And I met a little girl. Well, I'd known her. We went to high school together and went to the dentist one day, and she was a dental assistant, and she come in there, and I thought it was the prettiest girl I'd ever seen. And I was too shy to ask her for her number. Very shy. The only time I wasn't shy is when you put some liquor in me. And then I was Casanova or whatever you want to call it. And, but I seen her the next day, seen her car that going down in front of the lumber plant. So I hopped in my car and I chased her down. And I said, I didn't get your number and I want to take you out on a date. And that's what I did. And a year later we were married. She had a 3-year-old daughter at that time. And so the family started. I didn't go to a whole lot of meetings after that. I did go, but I didn't go to a whole lot of meetings. I loved my family more than I liked you in these rooms. I liked being with my family more than I liked being in these rooms. And so they took all of my time. And I stayed sober for 7 years off alcohol. I had a little maintenance schedule going on there with some other things. If you'd like to talk to me after the meeting, I will. But I thought that was staying sober in Alcoholics Anonymous. As long as I didn't put alcohol in my body, I thought I was being sober in Alcoholics Anonymous. One day my wife looked at me and she said, you know, as long as it's been since you took a drink, I don't see why you can't just have one. Boy, that's all I needed. That's all I needed. I agreed with her 100%. And you know, for a lot of years, I could control when I drank. Now, when I took that first drink, I couldn't control how much I drank, but for a lot of years, I could control when I drank. We would go off on weekends for anniversaries, Valentine's Day, years on down the road. Once a month, we'd just go out and celebrate for a weekend and go off and stay in a hotel somewhere. We didn't drink around the kids. My father had passed away. 1 month, my mother had brain surgery and didn't know whether she was going to live. The next month, Black Lumber Company burnt to the ground. And a few months later, my dad was put in the hospital and died 10 days later with cancer. Now, I tell you these bad things that happened to me, not to say that all these bad things, and I was sober at this time, not to say these bad things had anything to happen for me to start drinking again. It was a year later after things got so good for Ricky B. I became the president of that lumber company. I was able to get things that I'd never had before. I could give my family things that they'd never had before. We could go where we wanted to, buy those fancy cars. And that's when my wife said that, and that's when I started drinking. Never have I been sober and started drinking during real bad times. It's always been when things have been going real good for me, and instead of giving the credit to God, I took the credit. I pushed God away, and the drink came next. That's the only time I've done that. And it didn't take me long. 4 years later, I found myself back into the program. First time was to get my license back. Second time was after me and my wife separated. She took my son away from me. He wanted to live with me, so I went to Fellowship Hall. She had a 50B out on me, which I have no memory of whatsoever. She said I called and threatened her on the phone, and I don't remember it. She took a 50B out on me, and the judge, she worked out a deal with the judge and the lawyer. If I'd go to Fellowship Hall, she'd drop the charges. And that's what I did. So I come to the program the second time to get my son back. Now, both times when I come into these programs, I had crossed that line. I was out drinking alcoholically. But I went back out. I put my son through hell for several years. My wife let him move back in with me after I'd gone through Fellowship Hall and been sober for, 6-8 months. And there again, I didn't drink for 4 years. A lot of other things. But I didn't drink for 4 years. I didn't stay in the program. I come for a year and then quit coming. And I could remember I'd started inviting people over to the house. My mother had passed away during that time. More stuff was left to me. I'd put a pool in the backyard. I'd started inviting people over to party. I wasn't drinking at the time, but they were bringing coolers of beer over. And it didn't take long. I can remember to this day walking up the sidewalk in the backyard and reaching down and picking a beer up out of one of those coolers and drinking it. That drinking spree lasted 15 months. The house I lived in was a nice house. I had my son and a bunch of his friends. Now, he was 17, 18, during those years, 19 years old. He was living upstairs with a bunch of his friends, and I was living downstairs, and he was partying upstairs, and I was partying downstairs. A lot could have happened to me during those years. If the police would have come in, we could have got into a lot of trouble. But by the grace of God, we didn't get caught. I run all my friends off. They were scared to be around me because when I drank liquor, I got mean. I would break pool sticks in half and come after you, whatever. It didn't matter how big you was. And I was still small at that time. I'll tell you that story later. But anyway, I was small. I had lost a lot of weight. Taking a lot of things that makes you lose weight. Didn't drink, didn't eat a whole lot. The kids would go out in the morning and get me 2 sausage link biscuits from Biscuitville, bring it back to me. I have a dog. I still got that dog, Oreo. Love my dog to death. And they'd bring me 2 of them biscuits back, and I'd be laying on the basement floor on a twin mattress. Now, I had a king-size bed right over in the next room, but I'd lay on that king-size mattress in front of the big screen TV, have my half a gallon of liquor beside me. I'd take one of the sausage links off one of the biscuits, and I'd eat it, and I'd feed the rest to my dog, and I'd drink that half a gallon of liquor. I did that every day. I didn't have to go get my liquor. The kids would come from upstairs, downstairs, and get my debit card. My son knew the 4-digit number to get money out of the machine, whatever he wanted. I said, you can get whatever you want as long as you bring me that half a gallon of liquor. And we did that for 15 months. Everybody was gone. The kids didn't know what to do upstairs with Daddy, because all he did was lay down in the basement drunk. I'd got down to 129 pounds. My sister started calling me, and I don't remember any of this. This is what she's told me, and she would call me, and she said the first thing I would say on the phone is, "Di, I've had a stroke." Now, why I told her I've had a stroke, I don't know. It may have been the reason I couldn't talk. I couldn't talk plain. Well, of course, her and her husband were going to jump in the car, and they're going to come over there. And they'd pick me up, and they'd put me in the car, and they'd ride me around trying to get me to go to the hospital and trying to get me to go to another treatment center. And I'd have no part of it. She said I'd get very violent, and they'd bring me back home. This happened 3 different times. And she'd go upstairs and tell Stephen, you know, your daddy's going to die if he don't quit drinking. And he didn't know what to do. And finally, Diane called Dennis, which had been my sponsor for a year. Now, me and Dennis has known each other for 35 years. She called up Roy the first time and got Dennis's number from Roy. And she told Dennis, if we don't do something, Ricky's going to die. And he gets in his car and comes down there that night. And that was November 19th, 2009. He says he finds me in the bed that time with Oreo. And Oreo's very protective. She's half lab and half Dalmatian. And she's very protective. And he said he comes in there and Oreo runs him around the room. And he runs into the kitchen, has to jump up on the counter and he tells all kinds of stuff. He makes a lot of it up when he tells his story. He said my kitchen floor was completely covered in empty half-gallon vodka bottles. I don't remember, because by the time I got back home, him and my sister and a couple other people went down there and cleaned my basement up for me while I was in the hospital. But he come over and got me that night. And funny thing, about 6 or 8 months before this time, I had called that lawyer friend of mine that I was best friends with and had him bring papers down to my house to give my sister complete power of attorney over me, financially and health-wise. The only thing I can think of that I had this done because I knew exactly where my drinking was going to take me, and I knew I couldn't make sound decisions at the end. And I'm so glad I did, because, folks, I didn't ask for help November 19th. I didn't call anybody and ask for help. I didn't want to quit drinking. I didn't think I could quit drinking. Him and another girl carried me to the car and took me to the hospital that night. He did threaten me about my sister sending me to Buckner if I didn't go with him. And he asked me, what would you do? And he said, I believe you better go with me. And he said the last words out of my mouth were, I'll go if you'll fix me another drink. There again, I wasn't asking for help. I asked for another drink. And sure enough, he goes to the freezer and gets my vodka out of the freezer, pours me a solo cup, tries to find a Pepsi can somewhere that doesn't have cigarette butts in it, and he didn't find any that doesn't, so he just pours it in there anyway. He brings it to me, and I gulp it down, and he says, I was out just like that. Then they carry me to the car, take me to the hospital. I don't remember a whole lot about that night. They said I was very, very ugly to the nurses, and I wish I knew who those nurses were today, because I'd make amends to them too. A miracle happened that next morning in the hospital. I woke up, and for the first time in 15 months, the obsession was gone. Even though I didn't have anything to drink beside of me, I didn't want to drink. And for a long time, it's the first time that had happened. I believe it was by God's grace. His amazing grace. The chains were broken, as Amazing Grace says. God had set me free. Now, I got rid of the alcohol, and for the months to come, I suffered dearly from all those isms. But I got rid of the alcohol. At that time, our home group was only 8 members. They still talk about it to this day. Rick standing at the end of the meeting saying the Lord's Prayer, and we're all holding hands. And you could see everybody shaking in the whole circle. That's how bad I was shaking. I used to joke to people that I'd had tremendous growth in this program because at 2 years sober, I gained 100 pounds. And I found a new addiction. But it's a whole lot healthier for me, believe me. But I come in this program and as Banks said earlier, I went to any length. I went to 2 and 3 meetings a day. I was in a different kind of business when I got sober this time. I had a manager running that business, so I had very little responsibility, which was bad when I was out there drinking, but it was good when I got sober because I could go to a lot of meetings. And I went to 2 and 3 meetings a day for a long time. And I still go to 5 meetings a week. I got a sponsor. I worked the steps. The God that I'd always believed in was back in my life. I'd always pushed him away. He had never pushed me away. The wife that I lost, I didn't get back. She got married a year later. Took me several years to get over the resentments I had her. When I got here, it was everybody else's fault. Well, if you hadn't have done this, I wouldn't have done this. You know, I wouldn't have had to drink as much if you'd have done this. I blamed everything on everybody else but me. And when I started working these steps, especially step 4 and 5, and each problem that I thought I had with somebody else, I could see my part in that. If I went back far enough, I could see where I started the problem to begin with. But something happened later on that it was their fault. But I got rid of all those resentments. I spend time with Christmas and Thanksgiving now with that ex-wife and her new husband and my ex-mother-in-law. Because our family, we have a son together. He doesn't see his mother much now, and I don't really know why I pushed it for a long time, but I just had to turn that over to God. But they're not very close now. I've tried to help anybody in this program that wants help. So far, I haven't got, I've got one guy that I sponsor, and he's got more time than me. Mark's got 10 years of sobriety. And I've got several people that I talk to on a daily basis. The simple tools of this program was given to me when I first got here, and I still use them. I get up in the morning and I ask God to keep me sober. I read something spiritual that morning. I pray to God several times during the day. At night, I thank Him. If I talk bad to somebody during the day, I make amends for it. I'm not perfect yet today. My anger still gets the best of me, especially when it comes to the kids living in my house. I have a son. I have 2 grandchildren today that's never seen their grandfather take a drink. The first granddaughter that was born, if it had been up to her grandfather, she wouldn't be here. And I hope she don't ever hear that. And these rooms is the only place I tell that. Because I'd only been sober for a few weeks when I found out that my son's girlfriend was pregnant. Selfish and self-centered. not seeing any way how I could take care of another child, and knowing good and well that my son and his girlfriend wasn't going to take care of that child. And I gave them the option to giving that child away. And thank God they didn't. They chose the right thing to do. She's a beautiful 6-year-old today. I have a grandson that was named after my son and my father, Stephen Austin Batten. I named my son after my father, Stephen Austin Batten Jr. So my son him and his girlfriend both got involved heavily in addiction. They ended up, both of them, getting on heroin. My sobriety over the last 7.5 years has not been totally a bed of roses. I have lived with addiction in my house this whole time. This program, God of my understanding, and these steps has kept me sober. I have not wanted to put anything in my body that would change my mood. I have to do it through prayer. I have to do it through phone calls. So if you're new here, there's going to be trials. There's going to be things you're going to have to go through that back when you was out there drinking, that you used to drink over. Lord, if my shoelaces broke, I used to have a drink. I mean, it doesn't matter. Now big things can happen, and I don't have to drink. My son he had been working for me for several years when he got on this heroin. He'd break into my car and steal the car wash keys and go down there and wipe the whole place out. I'd have the cops sitting there waiting on him because I knew he was going to the car wash to steal. And I'd have the cops sitting there waiting on him. I said, well, maybe this will scare you. Maybe this will work. It didn't work. I tried everything. I enabled that boy almost to death. And finally, what everybody was telling me to do, I kicked him out, and sure enough, he wiped me out again. Took 3 felony charges out on him. Had him locked up, had him put in jail. Left him there. Left him there until he started to beg to get out. Then I sent him to Path of Hope. He went to Path of Hope, and at the end of 28 days, he didn't want to come home. He wanted to stay there. He gained about 30 pounds. He looked the healthiest I'd ever seen him. And because Dad wasn't cooking then. So he come home and he started in this program. And I'd like to tell you that it's been a bed of roses for him too. But his girlfriend just can't get it. She's sober today. She just come out of detox about 2 weeks ago. So she's on this road to recovery again. All we can do is love her and try to help her. Get her to as many meetings as possible. Get her with the other women in the groups. Women help women and men help men. That's the way it's got to be. Any other way has always got me in trouble. Several of the people I've tried to help, it's always got them in trouble. They've always ended up drinking again. This program is a life for me. Me and my son work together on a daily basis. We don't work very long, but we work together. We have a business that doesn't require a whole lot of time there. It's more maintenance than it is anything, and maintenance and cleaning up, so we're probably there a couple hours a day. So I have time to do whatever. I have time to go wherever, unless something breaks down. I still call my sponsor on a regular basis. I don't call him every day like I used to. I did for 5 years. I called my sponsor every day. For a long time, that I was still had that fear inside. For a long time, I had that fear inside that I couldn't do things in life. I was afraid if I did certain things that I would drink. that fear is gone. I know if I have a reason to be anywhere, that my God will look after me, and I won't take that drink. It's amazing. The older I get, the younger the audience gets. Isn't that right, Wallace? I'd like to thank you for inviting me to speak here. And, God bless.